Welcome back, everybody. We're back here with the deadliest of woods, and we have solved the clutch issue. I know what you're thinking. What does this have to do with the clutch issue? Well, it doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with it. But why don't you come with me? We got two problems to fix here, and we will then solve this clutch forever. Sound good? Let's do it. Well, like I said, we're back here with the deadliest of woods because where I left off, we were still having issues with the clutch slipping. And since then, I have figured out what's going on here. And hopefully it surprises you like it surprised me. After you solve everything, you go. But so what we're going to do now is we're going to get all of this back together because the other thing this bike does is the belt squeaks. Now, this bike in particular, it squeaks when you slow down, and if you tighten the belt up, and also squeak when you're accelerating as well. So you can either deal with a squeak while you're slowing down or a squeak, the whole way. And I've tried adjusting this thing and unadjusting this thing and alignment issues, and I've tried it all. And so I was talking to Phil up in Pennsylvania there, and I don't want to say Philly. I don't think he is. Somewhere in Pennsylvania. And he was saying that he had one that would squeak real bad as well. And what he did was he took the belt off and gave it the old flip-a-rooney, and that seemed to stop the squeak for him. And at this point, let's give it a try. I mean, the worst that can happen, it's got the 30 tooth sprocket on here, and one of the older ones. So maybe it's that thing that's causing the squeak. Maybe it's the belt. Maybe if we wear it one direction, then wear it the other, maybe it'll stop squeaking. Maybe it'll squeak on decel for the rest of its life, and that's fine. If at the end of the day, the only squeak it has continues to squeak when it slows down, because we tried, right? So why don't you hang out with me? Let's get this stuff back together, and then we will go over that clutch issue. So took off the engine mount, and now what we're going to do, belt back on, and then get the engine mount back on, get the engine mounted back in, get the exhaust pipes on, get the rear wheel on, give it an alignment, all that good jazz. I may spare you some of the more tedious situations, but no, that's from a place of love. I mean, you don't really need to just sit here and listen to me swearing and singing stupid songs the whole time. You looking at my bum? Are you looking at me, bum? Now, I marked it before I started, so I knew which way it was going this way. Now I know the arrow's got to point out. Screw this up. I don't know which way is easier to feed it, but we're just going to do it this way. Because why not? It's where arrows are where I like them. I can see them. And then remember to take the tape off. Gotta hope I do that. Let's get this back on. We got our engine mounts here. Look at this. And they're in really good shape still. I'm not going to replace them. If you haven't ever replaced yours, maybe go ahead and do that. And with these engine mounts, they have a little tab here for alignment, keep them from spinning. So make sure to get those tabs lined up. It's nice and flat. There's also a piece that goes between to fill the void and really tighten it up. So you get that lined up. Here's this sweet some sort of rod. I don't know, we're gonna call this the long ass nut bolt. The long ass nut bolt. You shove it in there, and before it pops out the other side, we'll go to the other side, the other engine mount and extender piece situation in. Now this side's a little harder because the battery box and everything in the way, but it can still be done fairly easy once I remember where my extendo piece is. I found the oh, there it is. The extendo piece is a little bit shorter, so don't get them mixed up. I don't really know a good way to do this one over here. Maybe it's easier to come through the back. Easier to get a magnet on this. We try a magnet. I haven't learned any tricks or anything yet. Any of that helpful stuff. If I ever knew what I was doing, it'd scare the shit out of me. You know what I mean? Try a little magneto here. Make this work here. Might just work. Let's get this through most of the way here. Ligget, my ligget. L-I-G-H-T. Get it in there. Right where it needs to be. This right here. World's greatest tool. Cheap screwdriver. Slightly modified for no particular reason. It's in everywhere. Move it up just a little bit. Perfect. Give it the old tappa, tappa, tappa. I did is I had the rod too far forward just by a touch, and it was grabbing. That was the problem this whole time. We tapped it back just a little bit, moved everything around, everything slid in like butter, right? It's gonna look dirty. This is for reference only. Put it up, I held it up there, okay? You know what I'm saying? So it got in there and then knocked it through. So now the engine mounts are back on. Make sure they're both, on the tabs, and the things are in place. Don't want anything to get weird. Tabs are on the bottom. Okay, and now we put this bolt through this side here. You have to hold one side while you tighten the other. They weren't super tight. I don't think they have to be that tight. Just a little tightness. Okay, they're about that tight. Let's see here. Those tight. Now we have to put the caps back on. And the caps, 3D style, 2D style, caps hold the engine mount in place. They're not just decorative. And they tend to fall off and run around a bit. So we're gonna tighten these on, and I'm gonna throw a little blue Loctite on there. I don't know if this is recommended or even wise to do so, but we're gonna do. We're gonna see what happens. A little bit. You can buy a new one of these, so if you lose them and you get it fixed in time, it's really not that big of a deal. What I've been told happens is that the caps, they don't have a ton of thread on them, fall off, and then that mount starts to move. What happens is that tab breaks off, and it turns into a fiasco where you got to remove the engine to put the new tab on there. That way we can just avoid that. You know, so if one does fall off, as soon as you can. So we'll try the old blue Loctite situation. Helps at all. 2mm seems to fit it tight. So get it on there, just get it on there tight. Boom. So there we go. The belt has now been on the opposite flip. Mounts are back on. Thick, yo. So now we'll get the wheel on. And for that I'll shut up, because you've seen me do that. And you've done it. This is basic. Removing a rear wheel is as basic as it comes, so oil changes and wheels, right? So I'll see you in a momento. Last night to get some food, which turned into drinks, which turned into me just shutting the garage and being done. So, after I got everything back together, got everything to where it wouldn't rattle, you know, nice and solid. Tightened the belt. We're gonna see if this works here in a minute. And we go adjust the belt, aligned it. But now, for the big reveal. So, as you know, I have been working on this bike for, you know, I don't know, a year and a half now, I guess. Just trying different things. It's, you know, it hasn't been my only project, so. But anyway, when it first came to Jamie's, we'd put oil in it, or he'd put oil in it, new oil, and it would start slipping almost immediately, you know, just, you know, couldn't even get it out of first gear. And I think he did 3 or 4 oil changes and some new plates, and the plates were obviously there. And then it did better, but it would start slipping after a while. And then one thing led to another. He couldn't figure it out. And not to say that he couldn't have figured it out. When I say one thing led to another, I mean, he got sick. And this wasn't top priority for him. Because at this point, he was thinking he was having to tear the engine down. One of the things working on other people's bikes is you never quite know the whole story. And so, and I never met the guy, and I feel bad that, you know, he lost his bike like this, but you never know the full story. And so after a while, you do the oil changes, and it would run for, you know, a little while, and then just slip like crazy. And that's what I was getting too, is I was getting just a bunch of crazy slipping. And when I first got it, you know, it was slipping almost immediately. Did the oil change, slipping. Did some oil changes and, you know, slipping. Then I tore it apart. The first ones I took out were pretty bad. You know, I cleaned them up real good, put them back in there, but they were starting to smear a little bit. So, from all the slipping from him testing everything on the dyno. That was the second set of plates that I got. And so I cleaned them up, put them back in, because I didn't want to put a new set in there until I really figured it out. So I put the new set in there, and well, I did a few more oil changes, and I put the new set in there, and what I was getting was just a real regular, almost like at the 20-mile mark, it would start slipping. And it was like, I was like, damn. And so when I first started doing that, you know, I'd get it home, and I'd nurse it home, and it'd be fine, and I'd nurse it and let it sit overnight, and I'd come out and ride it, and it'd be fine. And then you go down the road a little ways, and 20 miles, and it, you know, or so, and it would start slipping again. So at this point, I figured whatever happened in the oil was done. This was this was a whole new problem. So I approached it differently. I was like, okay, we're done. We're done with the whole slipping situation with the oil, the additive. Has to be. So I was like, it's got to be, you know, something with the clutch system, maybe I'm missing a piece. And so, you know, I started taking it apart, rebuild the slave cylinder, new master cylinder, did all this stuff, and it would write at the same exact time. And I noticed when I would, and I have it in a video somewhere, I'll try to link it somewhere, that it started slipping. And I was like, well, maybe there's air getting introduced. And I went down and I opened up the bleeder screw, and it just went, and that was without my, you know, I wasn't depressing the clutch or anything. And it just kind of everywhere. And I was like, damn, you know, that was a lot of pressure for just being sitting there. So, you know, I figured out it was building up pressure. And, you know, I tested everything out. I was testing and testing and testing. And, you know, the slave cylinder, you know, nothing was clogged, nothing was leaking, nothing was being introduced. You know, I thought I was like, is oil leaking in there? And it would build and build. And so it would get to the point you could watch it. The more you shifted, you know, the more you pulled the clutch in, the farther out the slave cylinder would sit. So I was like, okay, we're building pressure. And put a brand new master cylinder on, same problem. Rebuilt the slave cylinder, same problem. I replaced everything but that little hose that goes between the case and the slave cylinder. Same problem. And I'm like, what the hell? Everything's brand new. And so I was like, so I just got frustrated, you know, one day, and I came home and took off the banjo bolt here, released the pressure, took off the banjo bolt, and, you know, opened this up and blew into it, you know, blew in the end, and nothing was, you know, it wouldn't blow through. And there should be, you know, atmospheric air that comes through there. Because I was like, you know, at first I was thinking it has to be the slave cylinder, because on the bench, the master cylinder performed fine. But now, you know, it's not working here. And that was the brand new one. So I was like, well, damn. So I grabbed the old one, threw it on the bench. And what I did was I threw it on there, got my air nozzle with the rubber tip on there, shoved it in there, you know, put some air right through there. And I was like, oh shit, okay, well the old one works. I know it works. I just tested it, I'll put it on there. Just put it on there. Damned if it didn't work again. And I was like, so I came home really frustrated, and I was like, what the hell? And I went over, I was like, maybe something's clogging in there, getting clogged in there. And I went over to the new one that was bad on the bench, and I put it up there. I was like, you know, what the hell? And it worked. So I took it off again off the old one, and I came over here and put the hose just right up to, you know, right up on here, and it wouldn't work. It was holding back at about 9. I kept adjusting the pressure at about 90 PSI, it would bubble through. And I went, what's the difference? And now, I'm sure you guys have figured it out, hopefully by now, because you guys are smarter than I am. But I was sitting there at the bench, and I was like, what's the fuck's the difference? You know? And I was like, fuck. So I just took the old one and I slapped it on, went for a ride, and I was so frustrated with the new one that was on there. I just threw it over there, and I took the old one, I slapped it on there, and I had an old shift lever just hanging out over there that was kind of bent. I just threw it on there out of frustration, and I went for a ride. Did 100 miles. Everything ran fucking beautiful. And I was like, oh shit. And I came home and I was like, what's the difference? And I looked and I was like, it's that fucking lever. That fucking lever is what it was. So then I was like, what's going on here? What is going on here? Because I have, a set of these wide levers. I don't quote me on this, but I think they came from X-Man, back in the day. I think he was the one that made the wide ones. I don't remember. This is what I've been told. And I got a set on this bike right here. It works perfect. I got a set on that bike out there. It works perfect. And so I took it apart, and I don't know if you'll see, but it is slightly different. And I'll take you over there and I'll show you how it is different. But bueno. No es bueno. Bueno. No es bueno. And this little part is just off by a millimeter. If I just shaved this down, it would be fine. But I don't want to, because it's annoyed me. So one more time. Bueno. No es bueno. It is different. But this is slightly different. And then it dawned on me. And when I was working on old cars, one of the first lessons I learned is adjusting the brake pedal. And if you don't do it right, the same symptoms that happens is your rear brakes will lock up going down the road, usually the rear, on the car I was working on at the time. And your brakes will just lock up and they'll get hot, and because the pressure wouldn't release because you didn't adjust the pedal correctly. And it all came flooding back to me, and I was like, oh God, I can't believe it. And so that was the problem. So this bad boy is, gonna get a spot on my wall of shame next to my blown head gasket, and a couple other things that really frustrated me over the years. And it got me thinking, like, the guy put the Lucas in there, and it had the friction modifiers. And under perfectly normal conditions, it probably modified the friction just enough to where it wouldn't slip if you have a normal, perfectly adjusted, perfectly working everything. But if you introduce one little thing, and this bike only had 9,000 miles on it, so maybe after he put this on, he probably only took it maybe to the bar and back or something, and it was fine. But then you add the modifier, and that took it to the next level. So, because after I got the modifier out of there, it really would, like, exactly 20 miles. It was like a clock. And before, it would be like, I don't know, 3 or 4 miles, then 10 miles, then 15 miles, even after I got it. So that's the update. And so right now I've got one good wide lever for the brake and one bent, shitty, gonna break soon lever, and I'm gonna leave that on there. I like it. I like it's a testament. And it'll only break at the end. I'm not sure where this came from. Pulled it out of a junk pile. But I want that to be a testament. Every time I pull that clutch, I want to remember what the problem actually was. So, wall of shame. Haven't decided exactly where, because the wall of shame's over there, but it's starting to grow. So I need to move it to a bigger wall. And I don't know if I've ever showed this to you guys. I probably have, but I'm going to do it again. This is one of my favorites for the wall of shame. I, at one time, was a good employee. And this doesn't happen very often for me. In 2005, I was a good employee. And that was probably the last time I was a good employee. And it made me feel bad that I worked really hard to make sure Walmart got money. It's a weird thing about me. is I like success like this, where, I feel like I'm actually this figuring this out means more to me than this. So then some approval of some nightmare corporation that I still shop at from time to time. I'm not talking that much shit about Walmart, but I think it'll go there. So that's the problem. So now we got this back together. Let's get it adjusted. Let's get it ridden. Let's get it out on the road, because it's been off the road for a long time. And it needs to be on the road. So a little dark right now, but I think we can still do it. It's got a headlight, right? The hell's it for? The headlight does headlight things. Let's take it out. Sick, yo. All right, well, peace out and do the things. Do something that makes you happy. This makes you happy, do it. Working at Walmart makes you happy, do it. Do whatever makes you happy. I'm learning that slowly. And maybe I'll figure it out before my parents did. That's the whole point, right? Learn things quicker than your parents. All right, peace out.
2,000 years later.
Still squeaks. Turn the belt around. Obviously, you saw that. Made sure I tightened it up. Now I tightened it up, and I kept kind of like tightening, and then what was happening was it squeaking, and then it got to the point where it just squeaked both ways. So I put it back to where it was, and so now it just squeaks like normal. Maybe the belt, when it wears in, will get a little better, but you know what? The Deadwood squeaks. And the only other thing that people have said is to switch out the drive sprocket, and sometimes, this one was a fairly early on, I think, 30 teeth sprocket. So maybe we could do that, but I'm not going to do that. This thing squeaks, and that's just the way it is. That's the way the Deadwood do. The Deadwood squeak. And if you don't like it, then don't ride near the Deadwood. And I can ride the roads all by myself. Passenger peg stiff. So yeah, still runs great. Shifts like a banshee. Clutch works better than probably ever has. And still, I think my best running one. It runs exactly the way it's supposed to. And there's no weird noises, nothing jingles up here, Just the belt squeak. So what can you do? I'll tell you what you can do. you can write it with a squeaking belt, and that's what I'm going to do. So